Hello, hello. Welcome, everybody. This is Neil with Portal to Ascension. Good to be here with you all. Happy end of the year, new year, and all the amazing things that you hopefully have been experiencing over the last week. And excitement for a whole new year in which there's going to be a lot of transformation that's going to be happening on the planet. And we're just setting up, really getting ready here at Portal to Ascension, creating a lot of events, getting ready for some epic productions, because this is the time that we've been waiting for. This is the quickening, and transformation is happening on this planet at a level that, even though I hoped for, maybe I never thought it would actually happen, but I'm seeing that it's happening now when it's coming to the truth of who we are, an ancient civilization connection, and the fact that we are not alone in the universe, which is now permeating into the mainstream culture. So today I'm excited because I am bringing on two individuals that I recently connected with, and we have entitled this stream today Shred the Veil. Let me make sure I have the name right here. Shred the Veil and Awakening to a Greater Truth, because Shred the Veil is the name of the actual show or podcast that the two individuals that I'm bringing on have been behind, and bringing on some amazing speakers in order to do what we're doing here at Portal to Ascension, which is really just bringing out more of this awareness into the masses so that we can step into an understanding of who we are and our position and place in the cosmos. So we're going to get into this today. It's going to be a discussion and an interview. And I was just interviewed on their platform just a couple of days ago. And it's really cool because these two individuals, Derek and Daniel, are brothers. And I really love I just love the when family members are in this work together, or when you're able to openly share this information with people that you're in family with. I feel like it's really beautiful that there's some sort of level of ancestral healing that occurs with that. There's some soul contracts. And from my experience of my family being very kind of on the other side of this all, I really do honor and respect like when I see that happen. So let's go ahead and bring them on. A little bit about Derek and Daniel. They're the grandsons of Daniel Morris Salter, who participated in Dr. Stephen Greer's Disclosure Project, one of the most important disclosure events in our history. He was one of only 21 witnesses to attend the Washington, D.C. National Press Club hearing in 2001 out of over 500 witnesses who had given their testimonies to Dr. Greer within the previous decade. Daniel Salter claimed to have military security clearance 38 levels above top secret. He gained access to various high classified programs during his Air Force career and later continued his involvement in these programs as an operative in the NRO, National Reconnaissance Office, specifically reported into the Scientific and Technical Unit of Interplanetary Phenomena following his participation in the Disclosure Project. He then came out with a book, Life with a Cosmos Clearance, which is a really cool title, in 2003. In the past 20 years, Derek and Daniel have both had careers as mechanical engineers, working in various industries and traveling the world, all while continuously pursuing the individual research to confirm and corroborate the vast web of information that their grandfather had spoke about. They're compelled to continue their grandfather's legacy of disclosure and share a glimpse of what might be happening behind the scenes. And it's beautiful that this is a generational family when it comes to disclosure and getting this awareness out. So they're really taking the baton and taking it to this next level of an actual disclosure and post-disclosure world. So let's welcome Daniel and Derek. Welcome, guys. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
It's good to see you both. And I shared a little bit about how excited I am that the fact that you are brothers and that you had this background with your grandfather. But you shared with me the other day that you were skeptical of this information at first, right? So I'd love to do the same kind of flow that I'd love for you guys just to get into. What was the journey for you in order for you to really move from being a skeptic? Like, what was happening as a child? Like, and when your grandfather was saying what he was saying, what were you thinking, right? And then how did that move into more of a knowing rather than having that skepticism?
Yeah, go ahead, Dan. I'll just start.
Yeah. So our grandfather first started speaking about the UFO topic probably in the early 90s. Excuse me. Once he had retired from the NRO, and he had not really said anything about it previously. But so I was a teenager, and excuse me, my voice is a little off. But I was a teenager, and go ahead, Derek. I'm like,
Yeah, I can start. No worries. Yeah, so we were both just, pretty young. My brother's 4 years older than me. I'm a little bit younger, and I think Dan can speak more to maybe a lot more direct conversation with my grandfather related to the subject matter and what his background was. And for me, it was more of I took his whole book and library collection after he passed away. So I really got on the trail of following what books he was into, a lot from over the last however many decades, and it really rings true to what people are looking at now and referencing a lot now. And I just picked up the pieces where I saw where I saw there was a lot of connections, trying to connect the dots myself. And it when you talk about, actually one of the first books I read was about synchronicity. So that,
and Daniel, yeah. So Derek was saying that you have more to put into that. So what was the experience for you?
Okay, yeah. I apologize. I'm getting a sore throat, a little sickness. But yeah, we used to visit him. He lived in New Mexico. We lived in Virginia. So we'd see him in the summertime, and he would show me these videos of UFOs when I would go visit him. And he would tell me, this is the truth. This is really out there. This is what's happening. He told me about time travel. He talked about one of the things I do remember specifically is the Philadelphia experiment. He went into that. He talked about Nazis down in Antarctica after World War II and with their UFO technology. He talked about like holes in the ozone layer due to atomic weapons testing by the Nazis down in Antarctica. Those are like a lot of the ones that stood out for me that I remember over the years as he was talking to me about this stuff. And as a teenager, this is the first exposure I had to any of this kind of stuff. I wasn't into like UFOs or anything. So I didn't really know how to take it. It was really interesting. My parents never talked about it or anything like that. Because I don't believe my mom was even aware of it, or my dad, until he started, he probably told them a few things as well. And I'm not sure how much they really believed at the time. So they never really spoke to us about it. So, yeah, it was not something I shared a lot with other people. It's kind of like, no one's really going to believe you. So I didn't really know what to do with that information at that age. And it wasn't until, I was on my own in my 20s. We found out he was part of the Disclosure Project. We didn't even know he was going to do that. And then we came out with this book and so much information, Life with the Cosmos Clearance, and it was amazing. But his health started to deteriorate right at the time the book came out, and he shortly passed after that. So we really didn't have any opportunity to have conversations with him, to talk to him or ask him questions, which is really unfortunate. So a lot of the material we're left with is what was in his book, what we saw from the Disclosure Project, from his testimony, some videos that we found from the 90s where he's kind of giving lectures on different things, particleization and UFO crashes and things like that, his personal experiences with sightings and stuff like that. But beyond that, it's
that's amazing.
Yeah, it's been our journey kind of to find, corroborating information, which we've done over the last 20 years. Derek's kind of held the torch and led the way for us to really, see where people are talking about the similar stuff and see, what makes sense and what really is true or not,
So when you got into this information, and you started moving from the skepticism to like, whoa, this is real. So he'd already passed away at that point. So you never had the opportunity to connect with him on that.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah. And how old were you when he began telling you this information?
So I was probably 15 or so when I was going out there during the summers, and he started talking to me, maybe a little earlier. But it was over the course of, middle school through high school for me, when I would go out to New Mexico and spend a couple weeks at a time in the summer. And, he would kind of drip little information here and there and show me these things and have these discussions about, he would go in depth about, ET races and the Greys and things like that. And
wow.
Yeah, it was fascinating, and I wish I remembered more. I wish I had a better memory of back then, because I took it more seriously at the time, because I don't think I really grasped what that meant, or the where that fell into the reality and the scheme of things. That he's really got these clearances, and I had no comprehension of that. So,
And what's the age difference between you guys? How old are you, Derek?
It's 4 years different. So I'm 40 now. So yeah, we've yeah, like I said, we've had at least 20 some years to start thinking about this and see where the pieces fit. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're the older brother?
I am, yeah.
So you were younger. So you're hearing this at the same time, right?
Yeah, yeah. Like for instance, when he mentions the Philadelphia experiment, I remember as a kid, he's like, "Okay, watch that movie or watch Fire in the Sky," about Travis Walton. And so these little drips of like, "Hey, by the way, this is a true story, and take it seriously." And the X-Files and things like that, he already knew. Like, this is disclosure. Star Trek information is disclosure. Star Wars, that type of future. Technically, we already have that technology and these hidden programs, and he was aware of a lot of that.
That's why do you think it's so interesting? Like he didn't tell his I'm guessing it was his son or his your mother or father
Mother,
was his
Our
yeah,
mother, yeah.
so he didn't tell his daughter, but then he chose to tell you information, and this information probably was top secret, right? So it's like, do you have any inkling on why you feel he chose to tell you this information?
I mean, I feel like he thought maybe we would be more willing to accept it versus like our parents who were much older and probably they've known him for their whole lives, and we'd be like, all of a sudden he's saying all this stuff out of nowhere because he wasn't disclosing any of this before. They thought he was just a retired Air Force veteran, so they didn't know about his career in the NRO or any of that stuff. So yeah, it would be like a pretty far stretch for them to grasp onto that as an adult. I think, and maybe he felt that talking to us it would be more accepting of it. That's
and
Wow.
also
Yeah.
like for like a lot of family, I don't know if you're probably familiar that sometimes you don't have the best relationship with your dad or your mom, and so there's that when you have that connection or you're around them all the time, you kind of shy away from wanting to even hear a lot of what they say. It kind of just goes out the other ear. And for my mom, I think that was the case, and she didn't know what to believe and didn't really know how to take that information in. But it really was like the 90s when he started saying all this stuff. And I was 10 years old, and I remember to this day, my mom said, "By the way, your grandfather has something to tell you. Come sit down at the kitchen table. He'll tell you the story of his first UFO sighting." And that started it all. And it kind of went from there. And I just went back to playing outside. I was like, I don't know what to do with that, but I'll remember it, of course. But then what? So over the years, it was a lot of more information coming in, and just like, wow, okay, that fits. That makes sense. This makes sense.
And every time we talk about this and bring up like memories of him, I always remember something else. Like I just remembered one of the things that really fascinated me. He talked about the concept of extraterrestrials coming to our planet. They don't necessarily need to have a physical body. Like they exist in a different realm, a different higher dimension. And so when they come in here, they take on these bodies and they use these craft to get around in our atmosphere so that they can survive. So I mean, I remember that one really like resonated with me at the time. Like that was like blew my mind. Like something like that could happen. The concept of other dimensions and these ethereal beings materializing. So it's always cool.
Wow, this is very, very interesting. Like the level of depth of knowledge that he had, because you mentioned time travel, Nazis, Antarctica, ET races, non-physical beings. I mean, this is like runs the gamut of all the information that it comes out now. And in the 90s, of course, internet wasn't so prevalent and we didn't have this information everywhere. So right now someone can go ahead and just like do some research and then hit up all these points. But for someone to be on that level and then also telling the grandchildren, so they're probably not trying to lie and manipulate the grandchildren into some complete phony reality, right?
What would the motive be, right?
Yeah. So then he wrote a book, right? And so when did he write this book? And did you find out about it as he wrote the book, or was that after he passed away, you kind of discovered that as well?
It was in 2003. So this was like just 2 years after the Disclosure Project came out. And I remember to this day too, I was a senior in high school and we lived in Virginia. So it's like we would go in the summer to see our grandfather, and I actually went a lot more when I was in high school as I was getting older. But it was kind of like one of those things. We have our typical world in Virginia. We go to normal school, normal education, and then we have these summers, and we spend a week or so with our grandfather and get downloaded with some information and just see this whole other way of life. And it's just like, it almost felt like a dream, because we kind of have to see that the world exists like that, and you have these people with other ideas and points of view. So anyway, my point was just to say that we were in Virginia, and as a senior, my mom said, okay, I got to take your grandfather up to DC for this event. I had no idea what that meant. And so I remember the trip that he came up and he went out there, and that happened to be when the Disclosure Project happened, May of 2001. And we kind of heard about it. I got the DVD eventually, but this was probably at least a year later. I think it was in the paper, and my probably by the time it was in the paper and started to become news, then we kind of put two and two together. But he didn't openly say, this is where I'm going, this is what I'm doing. My mom would not really even mention it or know how big of a deal it was. She was like, all right, it's just some event. And then 2 years later, he writes the book, and we didn't know he's putting that book together. And if you read the book, you can see the vast amount of information and what knowledge he had. And wherever he gathered that knowledge, like you said, it was right when the internet was really starting. We knew our grandfather wasn't like a tech guru on the internet all the time, or even knowing where to access a lot of stuff. He must have had files or known this information from a long time ago. So by 2003, we're reading this, and then we're like, okay, there's got to be something to this. But again, I'm like, do I believe even half of it? But if only like 2% or just a very small percentage is true, this changes everything. It's a game changer for the whole world. So that's where I was like, I want to find out the answers. I want to keep doing the research and see. So,
and unfortunately, at the time the book came out, I guess starting right before the Disclosure Project, he had a series of like mini strokes, so his health was deteriorating. So it was very difficult for him to communicate. So even after the book came out, when we would visit him, he was really in just really poor health and really wasn't. Yeah. We weren't really able to converse with him or anything. And then a few more years until he passed, but the strokes just kept coming, and so yeah, it was a shame, the timing of it all, but we never got to really talk about it with him.
And we don't think that's by accident either. We think that likely there was a reason why he was declining so fast. Once that all happened, it only makes sense with the amount of information he had. And he was the only one from the Disclosure Project to when they went on podium to give their testimony, he froze up. He just couldn't talk. So he's the only one that froze up and said, I can't. And they took him off stage. And then he called my mom and said, I have to go. I got to get out of here. I don't want to stay. He left early from the event. So.
And from what we've gathered from, over, digesting the material that's in the book and talking about it with other people over the past couple of years, we've kind of realized there was a lot of information that obviously he didn't put in the book that he had access to and that he knew about. And this was the information he felt safe putting out there, because a lot of the testimonies and information that people he knew in his realm, like Phil Schneider, William Cooper, these guys, that he actually knew these people, and they didn't have such good outcomes when they started disclosing information. So there's definitely a lot of fear around disclosure in that time for him. So we'll never know exactly the depths of what he knew, unfortunately.
Yeah, that makes sense, especially right now what's going on with David Grush and all the information coming out, and Stephen Greer's press conference, where we're under the awareness now that some atrocities have been created in order to really hold this truth and not to disclose it to the masses, and including people being threatened, people being killed, right? This awareness and information when it comes to us not being alone in the universe literally permeates through all industries in the world. It restructures everything from religion to the monetary system to the petrol, dollar, and just gas in general, electricity, everything that has been utilized to maintain control. So it makes sense that back then, before there was even a Whistleblower Protection Act, right? That's even not, it's loose right now anyway, that he would have, these kind of feelings. So what are some revelations, Actually, I want to take a pause here for a second, because we've had a few people join us in the last 5 to 10 minutes, and I want to just tell everybody what we're speaking about so everybody can catch up with what's going on here. And I'm with Derek and Daniel from Shred the Veil. And these two individuals are, basically taking the baton from the grandfather who was, I would say, the whistleblower that was part of the original disclosure project with Stephen Greer in 2001. I'm sure a lot of you who are tuning in know about this. And that was really the milestone that set an industry for UFO disclosure, right? And it was the beginning phases. Many of the people since then in the 2000s that have now like hundreds of thousands on YouTube, Instagram, and all the stuff, getting this awareness out, were a part of this and or were inspired by this. And Derek and Daniel's grandfather was one of the individuals that was there. He wrote a book, Life with a Cosmos Clearance, correct? Life with a Cosmos Clearance. And so now we're talking about the foundational elements of how it all happened. We're going to get into some details here of what are some revelations in this book. And then what Derek and Daniel just shared was that he was coming out with a lot of information, sharing it as well. They were a child with all types of information. And then he went to the disclosure project and he froze and wasn't able to communicate what was going on with him, which seems like maybe he really felt like, should he communicate this information? And just being in that situation, I'm sure like you don't know what you're going to say and what you're going to get in trouble with. So is that a good summary, guys?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And
So,
you know what?
go
That's
ahead there.
what you just reminded. Well, thinking of that and the sequence of events, that makes me think too. What he put in the book 2 years later probably had something to do with how the outcome of that event happened, and maybe what he felt comfortable sharing. And so everything he put in the book actually is like on public record. You can go back and reference it somewhere. So it's not like he's putting something that you can't go find for yourself. I think he tried to do it the safe way, and we talked to Dr. Salo about that. It makes sense. That's what he was trying to do, to cover himself a little bit.
Let's get into the book then. So what are some revelations in there? And, we spoke, as I said earlier, Nazis, Antarctica, ET races. Can we get into some of those topics and maybe what he shared with you and or the book? Like, what are some ET races? What are the agendas going on the planet?
So so his involvement, just a little further background, he discusses this in the book, of how his interaction with the ET started and how he got into this. He started in, I think it was 1949 in the Air Force. And his first encounter was as soon as he got in, they were at Warner Robins Air Force Base, and he was a radar specialist, and he had his own unit that he commanded, and they were doing these radar tests on Strategic Air Command, and they found something on their radar, and they could visibly see 3 UFOs, hovering, just completely standing still. They went down and got it on the radar, confirmed it, and then they just took off and vanished out of sight. And so he called it in, and then that was right before Project Blue Book had started. And they told him to, you can't tell anybody about this, and tried to dismiss it and everything like that. But from that first encounter, I think that's how they knew what he had seen, and that's kind of got him his pathway into getting higher clearances on various projects that he worked with. He also worked under Benoit Mandelbrot for a while in this climate control in Eglin Air Force Base, and that's where he said he learned a tremendous amount of information and started to gain more access to the higher classified projects and stuff like that. Eventually, he became a part of Project Blue Book for the military, trying to, anyone who was a witness or saw something, he would try to dismiss it and talk them out of it, and say, it was swamp gas or whatever. They used to whatever they used to try to dismiss things as back then. That was kind of his main objective. And he says, if he was the first round of people, if that didn't work, and then the second round of people came in, they were the ones that would like threaten your family and try to blackmail you. And if that didn't work, then they would actually have these contractors, these whack-a-nut guys that would come in and take you out or something if it would got to that extreme. So he was very aware of the threats that the military was willing to enforce on people. He had crypto clearances that we've actually verified from his military record. So
we finally got that within the past year. Finally got his records.
Yeah, so we've been uncovering stuff as we're trying to dig deeper and deeper, requesting documentation on his career and stuff like that. So we have some evidence of his involvement there and what he got into. And he said his specialty where he was, it was the Interplanetary Phenomena Technical and Scientific Unit within the NRO. They specialized in particleization, which we found out is kind of the basis behind time travel, is what he told us. And he mentions in the book. And then also UFOs and extraterrestrials. So that's kind of where he's coming from. And then he goes into depth on kind of the history of UFOs and the Nazi stuff that started, as early as, the secret societies in the like 1920s, was, started meeting and working with that, and then getting involved with Hitler and everything like that.
He goes really deep into the Nazi stuff. And the occult side, he knew quite a bit. Yeah.
So what years was he in the Air Force, and what years was he part of the programs, the secret programs?
So he was in the Air Force from 49 to 69, and then he got into the NRO after that. And I assume he retired or got out in the early mid 90s is when he started talking about stuff. I felt comfortable that he could even talk about stuff. But even in his Air Force career, having that first encounter, I think he did have some access, some clearances that led him to, be recruited as an operative after he retired from the Air Force. So he was already kind of in the know in a lot of these different things. And he was the only whistleblower from Dr. Greer's first disclosure project that mentioned the ACIO, and that it even existed. So that was kind of interesting. And he talks about the ACIO in his book. He talks about various downcraft that have been recovered and the reverse engineering technologies that have come from it. Or some other topics he goes into, Derek?
Like we were saying, the particleization part, that we're still trying to find out exactly what that is. The Kalahari retrievals, talks about George Adamski and his just how that's a very significant case. And then, there's quite a bit. There's a lot on just the secret brotherhoods, like the Masonic Brotherhood. He was a Mason, so he kind of knew already. He said his grandfather, actually, now that I go back and look at it, was his grandfather that he said was a 33rd degree Mason. These were probably the reasons why they let him into these programs early on. He was adopted too. He was like 1 out of 8 kids or 7 kids, and he was the only one adopted. So maybe that had something to do with it. There's just like a lot of reasons. He actually started his career in the 47 too. It was the summer of 47 when Roswell happened, and he started in the Army Air Force at that time. And so then the first sighting he had was 49. So the sequence of events in his career kind of lined up with all of the UFO, what we know, as the UFO lore and myth that happened since then. He said he also visited like NASA and would try to find out certain reports about the UFO subject matter when he had those clearances. So it's interesting that our grandmother and our mother worked at NASA in 69 during the Apollo moon landing. Like for some reason, they just happened to be secretaries working there. That was a coincidence. It just lots of little things throughout his life just are kind of amazing. And not even to do with the UFO side of it. It's kind of amazing. His story with my grandma and my mom coming to the US is a whole nother topic. But and particleization, like I said, I think that's something with time travel we didn't realize, like how deep it goes. And if he was really working on it since, say, 49 is what he said, he started with those programs. Just imagine what he might have known and how they were using this technology. And that goes into, maybe I should read this part because this is the only way that I can really make sense of how deep this goes with it within the NRO itself, like some of the black projects. This might help to see. And this goes into even like the post-hypnotic scripts, the mind control side of things. So let me just read this real quick. So other than the 3 aspects of the NRO, which was the divisions of developing satellites for the CIA, managing the agency's air operations, and for the Navy reconnaissance and for military aircraft, that was in the official capacity of the NRO. But the black part inside the NRO controlled and collected information via world spy satellites on all UFO activity entering or leaving the Earth's atmosphere. It instructed the military on the use of all beam weaponry from the Star Wars program from the 80s to effectively disrupt or dismantle any and all ET vehicles. The NRO and its military intelligence programs were formed to retrieve, capture, interrogate ET biological entities and ET vehicles in the name of national security. Part of the strategy was to mock human abductions, utilizing mind control or National Security Agency, NSA, hypnotic scripting for the purpose of public disinformation campaign to create fear regarding ET encounters. And the CIA works for the NSA and NRO on these black projects to be in control of exactly what information is going out to the public arena via the strong arm of the accomplice media. So that sums up a lot of what we're seeing right now. It's
this crazy. Is beautiful. This is what you're sharing is the missing link in everything, right? Because we have Project Blue Book, right? We have the whatever the CIA was before the CIA. I forget the initials now for that. And then we have the Codon in Colorado, the Codon study on UFOs. And then we have all this missing time, and then we have ATIP. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And this NRO is something people don't even know about, haven't even heard about. Interplanetary Phenomena Department, I forget what you said, but you're talking about some other organization within that.
Yeah, that was like the MJ12 unit. That was kind of the start of the MJ12 and that Interplanetary Phenomenon Unit, which Dr. Philip Corso, Colonel Corso talked about, and those people back in that era that were into that knew of that information.
Yeah, he talks about that unit specifically investigating Roswell, and it was formed a few years earlier to crash out in California was when it first was established. That's where our grandfather kind of fell into throughout his career. But it's part of the NRO, and the NRO was a secret organization until like the 90s. It wasn't even known publicly what it was. So,
right. So, they had J. Allen Hynek, which they brought into Project Blue Book in order to disprove. And he went in as a person who wasn't in the know, right? So he was like, all right, I'll disprove it. But then he couldn't help deny that something's going on. They had Richard Doty, that seems like he might have been around the same time as your grandfather, right? Because if your grandfather went from 69 into this NRO project and was trying to show that this UFO phenomena is disinfo or is not happening, I think that was around the same time as Doty. And so was when he went into actually, let's do this. If you could break down a little bit about, tell us again what the NRO means and exactly what was the scope of what the work was that was happening in the NRO.
So it's the National Reconnaissance Office, and the front is that they're communications and like the initial like satellites and all
spy planes,
surveillance kind of stuff.
Surveillance,
But they were what Derek was reading earlier. They were truly into intercepting extraterrestrials and controlling worldwide. How we interacted with UFO and extraterrestrial technology, and certainly it was part of the CIA and the MJ12 initiative, that group that really dictated everything. This is one of the arms of that.
The other part to that is that it was supposed to be, Eisenhower wanted it to be a civilian agency. It was part of the CIA at first and run, I think joint with the CIA and the undersecretary of the Air Force. So it was split up. And then the Kennedy administration took out the CIA component. And it's probably one of the reasons why Kennedy was targeted so much also. He was trying to get their hands out of what the NRO was doing. But at the end of the day, the NRO has been involved with all UFO, involvement, interaction, and any information that goes in and out. It kind of pulls from all the intelligence agencies. It has a way to have access to it. So what Grush is coming out with, David Grush, is super important. He obviously was read into some of this stuff, but he's also obviously not telling the full story or can't tell the full story. So that's something to keep in mind.
And the interesting thing, like David Grush, he's actually claims to be part of the NRO as well. He's one of the first whistleblowers besides our grandfather that I'm aware of that has claimed that he was part of that organization.
Mm-hmm. Right.
when your grandfather went into this program, unlike J. Allen Hynek that went in as a skeptic, your grandfather already knew about this phenomena and that it was a reality. So when he was going around trying to tell people that, for the elite government secret, whoever is running this, when he was going around attempting to tell people that, hey, this is not actually happening, he knew that it was actually happening.
Yeah.
So what would be, okay, you mentioned time travel a couple of times, so I'm really curious about that. What is some information that he shared about time travel? And I'll just preface it with that what's happening right now with Congress, Tim Burchett, and some other congressional members, even a senator from Wisconsin, has said, they're speculating on who these people are now, right? Finally getting to this, like, who are these beings rather than lights in the sky. Some of them are moving over to that. And a few congressional members have said that their theory is that it's us in the future, right? And there's been some whistleblowers that have come out as well saying that there's been P-52s and P-47s. P-52 beings are us 52,000 years in the future, and P-47 are us 47,000 years in the future, and those are two different gray beings from Earth that have visited us, right? So what kind of information is there on time travel? Have we mastered time travel? What did your grandfather feel is happening? And maybe you might have actually discovered more things as you've been interviewing people and doing your own research.
That goes way into that last chapter about the ACIO and the wingmakers and who the wingmakers are. And that was, we can sort of talk about that. But for sure, I think we are, it's both sides, right? It's other races. We're not alone, obviously, but are we also interacting with ourselves from the future? And in the last chapter, that's actually what it's about. The wingmakers are saying that they are us. They're a version of us 750 or some years ahead into the future, coming back to put these time capsules around the world so that we'll discover them when we're ready, like at this point in time, awakening, that we're ready to receive the information and hopefully help us to evolve into the right way instead of, destroying the planet, destroying everything we're doing right now. Avoid the nuclear. Exactly. Like you were saying. Yeah. So it's a total rabbit hole to go down in the wingmaker subjects, but we've done in-depth episodes on that on our channel before. And man, we're finding out that maybe our grandfather was actually tied to that organization. We've heard that from more than one source, and we're still trying to get, how can we really confirm it? We're trying our best to see where those pieces fit. And this whole time travel aspect with particleization, if he says he was part of a program that dealt with that, the principles of time travel from the 40s and 50s, then yeah, I think he was very much read into this stuff from the beginning. So it goes, there's a lot more. Like this year, I swear this year we've uncovered more than in the last 20 years. And it's just like, it's only building and building. So we have a lot more to discover.
Have you ever interacted or communicated with any of his colleagues that were in the Air Force with him, or even maybe had a chance to ask Stephen Greer? Because he might have told other people, that he worked with some more information. Have you pieced together any of that at all?
We've tried. I've tried. Actually went to Dr. Greer's Sirius event, the premiere in LA, and I met him briefly at like the after party. And he had his own. Yeah. Oh man, I wish I knew you were there. I wish I knew you back then. But I saw David Wilcock, and I met him and I shook his hand. But so these are where the pieces kind of lie. But like Dr. Greer kind of blew me off. He's like, well, if you need more information, just go to the website. It's there. And I'm like, well, no, it's not. That's why I'm asking you, can we have like the original footage? Because we only see what's edited in the DVD and what's out in the public domain. But there's obviously the raw footage of his testimony that we don't have. We actually know Emery Smith was the one that recorded that because he worked with Dr. Greer, and he apparently has some of that too. So I would love to get that from memory. That's one other thing. David Wilcock apparently interacted with him at the original Disclosure Project and did an interview. And David Wilcock references him in his videos. So we haven't been able to come back to these people and say, hey, can we get more information and insight on what you know? But it's interesting that all these people have it. It's just, so many people have those dots that we love to connect. and we still have.
David Wilcox said he remembered him from the Disclosure Project. He's actually referenced him in one of his books several times. And then we talked to Dan Willis about him. He remembers him from the Disclosure Project as well. Had coffee with him, he said, before they went out there, and kind of just, told us how his demeanor, and like you could tell, like he was definitely a lot of fear around all of the people that were there disclosing the information. So he said it was like a common thing, just the energy and the tension that was, these people felt coming forward with stuff. So he told us, that when our grandfather kind of froze up, he described it, like you could tell something was just holding him back, But besides people that were there at the Disclosure Project, we don't have a lot of other references that knew him at the time,
Do you want to mention Nancy Red Star, the one that helped? Because our grandfather didn't write word for word everything. It was more of a transcription, and Nancy Red Star helped get the book out. And so she has an interesting take on all of this in the disclosure movement, and she's very hesitant to talk about anything. So that's something else. And she was the one that said, your grandfather knew a lot more than he was actually telling, other than the book. There was a lot more that he was afraid to talk about. So she said that personally.
Yeah, she helped put the book together with him, because as I mentioned, his health, he had those many strokes and his health was deteriorating. So she was really really important part of the puzzle for making this book come out and getting all this information organized the way it is. But I've been communicating with her over the past few years, but yeah, she's very skeptical about wanting to be part of anything with the disclosure information. She definitely said he was holding a lot of information back, and he was very had a lot of discretion on what he was saying. It's just a lot of mystery around it.
Yeah.
Everything you're sharing, like you're saying that she's saying that he knew more, right? But you're really sharing a lot that shows that he knew more than most people that have just one side of it. And that's the whole thing. As we know that a lot of these programs are compartmentalized, just like when they made the nuclear bomb, people didn't even know what they were creating. They give people different components in order to, put this piece together. So yeah, it's really interesting how he has such a full scope of what's happening. And it seems like it taps into the spiritual realm, because then he's talking about these non-physical beings. And then that gets into the question of frequency and vibration and dimensions.
He goes way into that. He goes way into that, a whole chapter or more. So you'll love it. I was just rereading some of the book, and like he was very spiritual. He taught the Urantia book, if you know the Urantia book.
Interesting. Yes. Yeah.
So
very interesting. Wow.
Yeah, he had some Native American heritage, and he embraced that fully, the Native American culture, and he was always, teaching about their beliefs and about the ancient star people and the Hopi tribes and the Navajo and in the New Mexico area where he was living. So he was very much kind of aligned with all that at the same time. Yeah.
And we didn't really see that until like later in his life. Maybe he didn't seem like that all his life, but we could tell that's where he was. And after knowing all this information, you kind of waken up, and you kind of are you only can go in that direction of knowing, right, of love and light and frequency, and that is the key to everything, and consciousness, and it really ties in everything together. And so he knew that for sure.
Wow. Have you ever asked Emery Smith at all, but how that went down?
Yeah, I mean, we found out. Emery told us that he had the videos since he was like helping with the film production of the Disclosure Project footage. We tried to follow up with him several times on getting those, but I know he's always seems very busy, so we haven't been able to really reconnect with him to follow through on that to see if we get more information.
Yeah, because he probably doesn't have the footage anymore, but he says he remembers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think I don't want to call him out.
In similar programs or crossover programs, because Emery has a lot of the same stories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
most definitely. And I think Emery has the access and ways to vet out. I think he probably helped to vet out who our grandfather was, and then he's able to make the connection between us being related. He actually said that to me. He's like, I had to vet you out just to make sure that you're legit. I was like, yeah, okay, that's fine. So he's read into a lot, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, I've done like 40 to 50 events with Emery. So
Yeah.
we have we did like 20 Q&As with him. So like 50 hours of Q&A. So I got to just sit here and just listen to a lot of information. People have the reservations about Emery, and but after spending so much time listening to the information and the Q&As without any like prompts, anything like that, it's just information that just came out of just immediately knew the responses to questions that were so complicated and complex that
Yeah.
only someone that really has had that experience could ever even get that information.
Right.
Yeah.
And I love that you say that, Neil, because you for sure know that, like, after dealing with so many people, you can kind of read people pretty well after a while. And after knowing all the information that comes through and seeing where, okay, that makes sense because I've heard it here and here from this person. Like a lot of people from the outside, they might see somebody, Emery or whoever it is, Corey Good, like whoever it is, they'll just say, that information completely is all BS. There's no way it's true. But you can see where there's truth within what they're saying, and if it's, you can kind of see it in the way they interact. I mean, it goes back to the frequency thing, and what vibration are you, and what are you attracting? But you can also start to really see insights in other people at the same time. So,
Right. Yeah. I mean, honestly, the rabbit hole, like I've said this phrase so much that I feel like I need a new phrase, but I keep saying the rabbit hole goes so deep, much deeper than people in the know realize. Right.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
it's just, and you're sharing a lot of this right now, and even the seems to be a reality that the Navy and the Air Force have their own secret space programs, and it's so compartmentalized that they interact with different ET races, receive different types of technology. Michael Salas shares about a case where the Air Force eventually got technology with specific ET race they're connected to in order to be able to go to the ends of our solar system, be able to go there in a short period of time. And they get there, and there's a Navy spacecraft, a U.S. Navy spacecraft already there, and they had no idea because it's so compartmentalized, right?
yeah.
So it's just like there's a whole underlying world that coexists with us that really is time to start merging these worlds together.
Yeah.
Definitely,
Yeah. For compartmentalization, our grandfather, he claimed to have this cosmos clearance, and he thought, that was the highest clearance that there was. But I mean, we've seen other sources that there are, clearances above that. So I mean, and people just don't know about them until you're actually sworn into that level, and you have access to that information. Otherwise, you think you know it all because it is so compartmentalized. You're not aware of anything else around you.
That's so interesting you say that because I've met some people that are my friends or just people randomly at restaurants even that over 20 years that have said, oh yeah, I had top secret clearance. It's kind of an ego boost to be able to have that. Oh, I never saw anything like that, and I had a top secret clearance. So it's like they tell you, whoever they are, tell you that you have top secret clearance, and then you're like, oh my god, I'm special, and so nothing else can ever be more than what I've been given, and that's what we're seeing with the congressional members, because all of them believe they had top secret clearance, that there is nothing that they shouldn't know, and now all these people are coming out. David Grush and all the other whistleblowers that we're not allowed to know who they are coming out and speaking to them and saying, hey, actually, there's another multiple levels of clearance, and you guys aren't in the know, and it's making them kind of have an existential crisis. It seems to be happening.
Yeah.
Like it's even the foundation of the system that they're a part of, and they ran and got elected in, and became a part of the corrupt mechanism that is government. And now they're like, wait a second, there's a level of corruption we're not a part of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think hopefully that's a game changer, because now it's like, okay, well, I've been duped. I've been bamboozled like the rest of everybody else. So, okay,
Yeah,
now they'll help try to fix it, hopefully, for us.
but these people should be asking, well, who do these people at these higher clearances, who do they report to? Who do they answer to? Like, there's no one. I mean, they're just rogue. I mean, ultimately, they got to realize how crazy this is and how wide open it is. It's not, it's nuts.
Exactly.
And then there's the deeper question that, this, so, we spoke about this on the other show we did together, but there's Ryan Graves, and I forgot the other guy's name. Out of the three people that were on the panel, Ryan, David Grush, and whatever, they, there's the level of, oh, lights in the sky, something's going on. They're going faster than our physics allows. What's happening here? And then all of a sudden, David Grush throws a wrench in it. And actually, no, these programs exist. We've been reverse engineering craft for like 80 years. We have this many craft in our possession. Other world governments have them too. And then the deeper level is, do we have bodies?
Yeah.
Right? And the answer is yes, we have non-human biologics and fully intact UFOs and beings that are interacting with us, and deceased ones, it seems. And all of a sudden, the stories from Clifford Stone, Emery Smith, the ones that people in this world just couldn't get to the next level. What? You were in a program with the U.S. government in an underground base in New Mexico that had a tunnel connecting to the base in California, and you were dissecting ET bodies? I think you're lying, right? And now all of a sudden we're having this information come out on Congress that's probably the case. And we've had multiple validations over the last 4 or 5 years, 6 years, right? But this one, I think, is the next level of the depth of validation about these bodies.
Yeah, and I hope that people, when they hear this new information, I hope that they go back to people like Clifford Stone and
Phil
give
Schneider
validation to the testimonies they have. He's saying he could classify over 50 different ET species, and they have different protocols of how to handle each one. Like, they have all this knowledge in depth on so many different types of extraterrestrials. So, I mean, so many people have come
manual. He said they have a manual of the anatomy of these different beings in case they run into them at UFO crashes.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, to have that extensive knowledge, how long has this really been going on? And people need to go back and give some credibility to these previous testimonies from that original disclosure project, because they go so far in depth. I mean, it's amazing. And I think it really needs to be acknowledged more publicly.
There's a cool video of actually our grandfather from the disclosure project sitting behind Clifford Stone while he's talking to the press and answering questions. And he says, yes, there are 57 different body races. And our grandfather's just behind him, like shaking his head, like, yep, that's right. So, yeah, it's interesting. Way more to it.
And we have a comment here basically talking about the credibility of whistleblowers and things like that. And, somebody, I forget who it was, but somebody might have been Greg Cameron or somebody many years ago said to me that if there was one or industry or element in the world that would be the most infiltrated, it would be the UFO subject, right? Yeah. And it's because that we started this whole show with that it connects to all levels of power mechanisms, right? Mm-hmm. We got oil, electricity, energy, poverty, money, right? Religion, all these things that will completely transform, and a level of understanding the way the universe works, the nature of reality, and even our ancestry to the cosmos, which then eventually results in a level of sovereignty that literally could crumbles the mechanisms that have been controlling us for so long. So even though we speak about these people, you never truly know anybody, and a lot of these individuals coming out saying information, some of them can't say it all, and then there are definitely plants within this community that have been put there because we already know Richard Doty, your grandfather was a part of that at one point, right? And Richard Doty, he's like remorseful now, has regret about it. He's like doing his penance, trying to bring peace to what he's done there. So that's why, so let me turn it over to you guys and let's speak about discernment, for now. Like, what do you feel in regards to discernment? There's so much information out there, and sometimes people throw the baby out with the bathwater because maybe discernment goes a little to the extreme where they're not even willing to accept any of this truth. But wouldn't you say that it's important at this moment to really tune into, what feels right and what doesn't with this world of info?
Totally agree with that. Dan, do you want to say? I was going to say just that's so important right now with so much information we're getting all the time. And what I've always liked to do, I always like to have a physical book. I like to go back and reference something and that's there. And the books that have been talking about this before the internet existed, start there. Like, go back before the internet was even a thing, where you have these bots and you have all this sorts of disinformation that's so obvious now. I'm sure there was more, there was still some back then, but it's not like it is now. And you can go back to the testimony and the credibility of some of these people. Like I'll throw out Bill Cooper, like Behold the Pale Horse with Bill Cooper. So our grandfather said he did what Bill Cooper did in the Navy is what our grandfather did in the Air Force. So he had like been read into, you know, the cosmos level, those really high, the cryptographic clearance level, and seeing all sorts of information going in and out. But yeah, go back to the older sources first of all, and really, like you said, I think it's so important you trust yourself a little bit, but you have to know, you have to have a foundation to start from, and really get your foundation and basis of what you to grasp all of this in general. You can't just go in and be like, oh, well, maybe, okay, I'm just going to follow the flat Earth because that's kind of a cool thing that seems like a trend, but like you have to use some common sense. You have to use some critical thinking, logical thinking. Like that's why our channel on YouTube is called Critical, Logical, Rational Thought. Like there's just a lot you have to really take in, but you have to go within. Like we talked about on the last show, you have to go within to truly understand the world around you. Like you have to even meditate if that could be really something. Go into nature, do whatever you have to do to ground yourself and ask the questions. Ask yourself the questions and let the answers come. But don't wait for somebody else to just bring you the information and assume that that's going to be accurate. There's just too much out there to be wary of, to be careful and cautious about, especially in the disclosure movement. I mean, we see it at events all the time. We see people try to break it up and cause a lot of conflict and things. And it's just natural. That's going to happen with so much information. It's so powerful information that we have with this.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, you can, and for me, like it's like almost like an energetic thing. You can tell when someone has like a really big ego and they're trying to convince you one way or the other that they know it all, and this is for certain, and if they discredit other people, these people are completely wrong, and I don't know, that kind of turns me off initially, and for my own internal discernment, like it raises a flag that I'm going to be a little more skeptical when I hear what they have to say, and always look for corroborating information and as many different sources as you can. And then that's what we've kind of done with our grandfather's material, is trying to find as many different places where people have talked about and brought forward similar things. And when they're completely unrelated sources, that speaks a lot to me. It tells me these people aren't even aware of what's going on over here, but they're saying the exact same thing. So that's kind of like my own internal way of discerning things.
And I'll say one more thing, Neil, like regarding that topic, like I was going to say in the beginning, synchronicity has been a big part of all of this for me and finding the answers. So the easier it is to come to, like you're getting the answers, but somebody you run into, you happen to have this interaction with somebody that happened to have this other piece of information you were missing. Like that's not just coincidence. These things happen for a reason. Like follow that trail and understand, but also you got to be careful at all times and take in discernment. But when you're truly asking the questions to yourself and wanting the true answers, wanting the truth, if that's your goal and that's your only mission, and all the other stuff is BS and it just is kind of background noise, just focus on that truth that you are searching for. You'll get there. And synchronicity is a huge part of that. That's played in part of my life to help me with that.
Absolutely.
So listen to that.
Yeah.
Sure.
When it comes to disclosure and religion, when someone says my way is the only way, those are the biggest red flags for me.
Definitely. Yeah.
It's like, who knows that maybe you just have one limited perspective of all. There could be different angles, right? A lot of times that ego gets involved to want to be the ones behind it, want to be the ones behind disclosure, coming out this information. But we really need to be open to being wrong, right?
Yes.
That's another thing. And not to judge people for being wrong, because we're all just searching for a truth in a limited perspective dimension, right? Like, so there's going to be people that are wrong, and then to say some people are wrong and they're Illuminati of Cabal just because they're wrong, when they're just people trying to search for the truth, you know what I'm saying? So it's like you alluded to this, many angles. You need to look at all these angles. Something that I do is I spend a lot of time, almost half the time, if not a little more, watching things I don't agree with.
Yeah.
Just to see if there's anything in there that could shift my perspective. And I look at it from a neutral perspective. Like, for example, all the late night talk show hosts have completely been hijacked, like ever since 2016, right? But I still watch them, and I still laugh at the BS they put out there.
Yeah.
and I'm looking to see what the angle is. Wait, no, that's the manipulation I can see. So when you spend some time in that and do it from a neutral perspective, just see if there's information that you can integrate in your opinion. Because if you go just down one route and your way is the only way without bringing in other people's information, you're limiting yourself from understanding maybe the bigger picture of what can be going on here.
Yeah, you're missing the whole truth.
Yeah,
that's a good point. Very good point.
So let's get into your work now, right? You've created Shred the Veil, you're on Infinite TV, and I would love for you both just to, both of you to go and just like express what you feel your mission is now, and tell us about the work that you're doing and what kind of plans you have for the future.
Okay. Yeah. So we started a couple years back on Infinite TV. It used to be Conscious Vitality. But we started interviewing people. Laura Eisenhower got us on there really, and kind of got us in the mix of things, and trying to just bring forward information for people to have their own discernment and exposing them to things they may not have heard before, so they can make their own opinions and decisions on it. And that's the message that we try to put out there all the time, just to make sure you take away from whatever we present to you with whatever resonates with you, and to keep a good sense of skepticism and just really kind of feel it out for yourself. But we want to definitely expose people to that, and it's the theme from our grandfather's book. He talks about he was very passionate about disclosure. He mentioned the oil industry and the reasons why this free energy technologies and all these things are being concealed from the mainstream, and the implications that it has with the people who are in power now and things like that. But he warns us, if we do not, give this information to all of humanity, it's not a great future for us. We really need to get this out here and disseminate the information. And he was really pushing hard to make that known, that people need to know these things. And I feel like we're obligated to carry on that legacy and doing that in whatever way we can. So, besides Infinite TV, we started our own YouTube channel, CLR Thought, like Derek mentioned, and we're just trying to continue to get that message out there as much as we possibly can. So, Derek, if you want to add to that.
I was going to say, we never dreamed that we'd ever have a show. And 20 years ago, our grandfather wrote the book. We're like, okay, let's see where what's going to happen. I mean, is any of this going to come to light? But the last two, what happened in 2020, like when that happened, when the big pandemic thing happened, that was when we're like, okay, this is too much. Like we see where this is heading towards, and it's not a good outcome if we allow it. So that's when I felt obligated to be like, let's start talking about this and get out there if we can. And yeah, it like synchronicities happen to line us up to get on these platforms and to get started and meet these wonderful people. And I think it's about community. It's about growing the community. So I always get energized. Like when we're talking, Neil, like it's a huge boost for me. Like going to these conferences is a huge boost of just like, you're not alone. And I think people want to know that more and more. It's okay to question things. It's okay to be different, think differently. Like we have to stop judging people and just saying you have to be like this or like that. And it doesn't matter politically on both sides. We've done that. We ostracize people. We put people as outcasts and say like, you're different. You're not thinking like us, so you're not accepted. But all that kind of has to go out the window when it comes to something so important that could change the course of history and the technology for sure, like the financial system. There doesn't need to be people starving, hungry. All these criminal acts that are still happening. The border situation is a huge part of that. There's so much happening so fast that you see it on the news and it's in our face. I think that people are inundated with it where they almost just say, what can we do? It's too much. But I feel like we just have to be hopeful. We have to keep spreading the word and at least sharing ideas, because if we don't do that, if there's no freedom of speech and thought, then we're gonna go much farther down the wrong direction than we already are. So that's why it feels important to do this and keep sharing the message. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And it's really a fork in the road at this point, right? There's two different timelines we can choose from, and the new reality of us making the paranormal normal, because that's really what's happening with quantum physics and us realizing the nature of reality. That you and I were vibrating frequencies for some very advanced code that we had. Like something I like to say is that not only are we the actors on the stage, we're actors that forgot we're acting, right? And but what we forgot is we're also the directors, and we can change the script, right? And it's really time for that to happen. And during COVID, like you mentioned here, I feel a lot of people decided that there's no holding back, right? And I feel even the ETs are probably like, let's pick this momentum up a little bit, right? Because there's two types of world. There's people fighting for the old paradigm, but the old paradigm will not sustain the population of the planet only if we shift into a bigger understanding of infinite resources and get out of this lack mentality. Will we even get to that point? So, the work you're doing, the work we're all doing, is just the beginning phases of a new zodiac. And then every zodiac is a new covenant on the planet, right? And you can look at every 2,000 years as a new religion. And right now, this is the religion of no religion. It's the religion of vibration and spirituality. Yeah. And so it's destined in the stars, right? And I feel like it's so incredibly beautiful. I can't express enough that you two are brothers doing this, and that you already know this. We haven't spoke about this, like the esoterics behind your grandfather passing this legacy down, but it's in your DNA, and you guys are I feel on some subconscious level, he knew that this was going to happen, or whoever was feeding him this information knew that you were going to continue this work, right? And so just want to say thank you guys for picking up the baton, continuing the legacy, and really contributing greatly to this community, because what you shared today is literally the missing link of 50 years of disclosure. You know what I'm saying? It's really important. So for everybody tuning in there, share this information out there, because there is so many holes in the story and the narrative, and it's time for us to piece those together so that we can have a better understanding of what's happened and move into the future. So, Daniel, Derek, I'll just hand it back to you guys one more time. Love for you to say anything you want to share as we close it out. But just thank you so much for being here and being a part of the show today.
Thank you, Neil. I'll say really quick, that you reminded, just thinking about our ascension process, and this, I just read this in the grandfather's book again, when he talks about the time travel aspect and the ACIO at the last chapter. He mentions blank slate technology, and anybody in the secret space program, community knows BST, blank slate technology, and that's what the Labyrinth group was trying to work on. But he's basically was trying to say that on a third dimensional level, on the lower levels of existence, that does have an effect on things, right? Time travel, be able to change the time, go back, change the past, and then redirect things. That's such a big part of it. But if we're already vibrating, if we're already ascending to higher levels of the fourth, fifth dimensions, that no longer has an aspect to a part to play as much. That's kind of why also that 2012 aspect, where we couldn't see any more into the future with the looking glass technology. That's the whole aspect of it, because we're ascending, we're vibrating higher and higher. And so that's the whole point. That's the whole goal, to not let technology really choose what our destiny, our future is. We have to rise above the technology. Our consciousness, our individual self, human body and spirit is the best technology in the universe. Is the greatest technology. That's kind of what we're trying to discover and go to right now.
Yeah. And our grandfather references the Hopi prophecy in his book quite a bit. And the time is now. This is it. This is where it all comes together. So we're just blessed to be a part of it, and do whatever we can to help get this message out here and help enlighten people, really. So thanks, Neil, for having us on here. We really appreciate it, for sure.
Yeah, my pleasure, guys. I appreciate it too. And I'm really excited to continue working with you guys, stay connected, be friends, and see what we're going to create in the future. This is the beginning of a whole new world. So thanks, guys. I appreciate you.
Thanks.
Thanks so much, Neil. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. All right, everybody. So thank you all for tuning in. This is Neil with Portal to Ascension, and we're live on multiple platforms. We also have the podcast, Portal to Ascension podcast, so you can check it out there. and that is on all major and not major podcast platforms. So you can check out there. We take out clips, and this will be on that. So if you're in your car and you want to listen to some of what we have, you can tune into the podcast. Just quick announcement that we have a massive event going on January 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, called the Ultimate Star Beings Conference. 10 hours a day, 33 speakers, 5 MCs, really exciting, like nonstop awareness on we are not alone in the universe. Who are these beings? What are the messages we're receiving? 100% free, because we want to start out the new year with a big bang, so to speak, where we want to like, I'm theming next year the Galactic Origins year and Portal to Ascension. So it's just like, how do we infuse the timeline with the fact that we're not alone in the universe, and who are these beings? Because too many of these congressional members have heard so much information that it's not about military, China, Russia, but they keep saying, oh yeah, we need to find out if these are foreign adversaries. I mean, even other congressional members are saying information's coming out that these are coming from archaeological digs. Was Russia around 5,000 years ago creating a UFO in order to like spook the public of the US? I don't think so, right? So we want to move this conversation into that. So we have that big event, portaltoascension.org, sign up there. And then on January 1st, in 2 days, we have how to prepare for extraterrestrial contact. That's a free event as well. So just like a couple celebratory events on this topic coming in the new year. So tune in. Hope to see you guys there. Thank you all for messaging. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Starseed Energy, Pamela, Carolyn. Love you all. Appreciate you all. Have a beautiful rest of the year, and I'll see you on January 1st. Okay, bye-bye.